The elevator groaned as it climbed to the third floor of the Elm Street building, its rusted gears whining like a trapped animal. I stood inside, surrounded by cardboard boxes stacked haphazardly, my arms aching from hauling my life's belongings up 3 flights. The air was thick with the sour tang of mildew, and the flickering fluorescent light above cast jagged shadows on the dented metal walls. I was Claire, 26, freshly single, and chasing a new start in a city that didn't know my name, or so I thought. This apartment was my lifeline. High ceilings, wide windows, rent so cheap it felt like a scam, but in a city where a closet cost a fortune. I wasn't about to question my luck. Not yet. The elevator lurched to a stop, and the doors scraped open. The hallway stretched out, dim and narrow, its faded green wallpaper peeling like dead skin. A single bulb buzzed overhead, barely illuminating the chipped paint and scuffed floorboards. I dragged a box out, my sneakers squeaking, and that's when I saw him, a man, leaning against the wall by apartment 3B, just across from my new home. 3A. He was tall, gaunt, his gray hoodie stained with dark patches that looked wet in the half-light. His face was wrong to pale, to stretched, like someone had pulled his skin tight over a skull that didn't fit. His eyes were the worst, hollow, unblinking, fixed on me like I was the only thing in the world. I froze, one hand gripping the box, the other clutching my keys. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. My stomach twisted, but I forced a tight smile. New neighbors, right? Maybe he was just curious. I turned to unlock my door, the key shaking slightly in my hand. That's when he spoke, his voice low and raspy, like he'd been gargling gravel. "Claire, my name." He said my name. I whipped around, heart slamming against my ribs. "What?" I managed, my voice sharper than I meant, but he was already turning, slipping back into 3B. The door closing with a soft click. The hallway was empty again, but the air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me. How did he know my name? I hadn't told anyone here, not the movers, not the landlord, nobody. My lease was signed online, my name barely mentioned. Maybe he saw a label on a box, I told myself. Yeah, that had to be it. Just a coincidence. Inside, the apartment was everything the listing promised, spacious, with tall windows letting in the gray afternoon light. The hardwood floors creaked underfoot, and the walls smelled faintly of old paint, but it was mine. A fresh start after the mess of my breakup with Ryan, after months of couch surfing and scraping by. I'd landed a graphic design job downtown, and this place was close enough to walk. It felt like a win, despite the building's quirks, the creaks, the smells, the way the radiator hissed like it was whispering secrets. The landlord, Ted, had been a red flag, though. A weary guy with a permanent scowl. He'd met me in the lobby that morning, shoving the lease into my hands without making eye contact. "Keep to yourself, you'll be fine," he'd said, his voice clipped, like he was late for something. I thought he meant the usual neighbor drama, loud music, thin walls. But now, standing in my new living room, that man's voice echoed in my head. "Claire." I shook it off and started unpacking, stacking books and dishes, trying to make the place feel like home. By midnight, I was exhausted, my hands smudged with dust, my back aching. The apartment was a maze of half-opened boxes, but I was too tired to keep going. I locked the front door, checked it twice, then added the chain for good measure. The man's face kept creeping into my thoughts, those hollow eyes, that stretched skin. I told myself I was overreacting. New city, new stress, that's all. I brushed my teeth, changed into pajamas, and crawled into bed, the mattress creaking under me. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Then, at 2 a.m., I woke with a start, a sound faint, rhythmic, like nails dragging across wood. It came from the wall behind my headboard, the one separating my bedroom from 3B. I lay still, holding my breath, hoping it was nothing. Old buildings make noises, right? Pipes, settling wood, maybe rats. But the scratching didn't stop. It grew slower, more deliberate, like someone was testing the wall, feeling for something. My skin prickled, and I pulled the blanket tighter, eyes locked on the dark ceiling. The sound paused, then started again, closer now, like it was right. Behind my head, I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just listened as the scratching carved its way into my nerves. It wasn't random, it had purpose, like a message I couldn't read. I thought of the man, his voice, my name on his lips. How did he know? The question gnawed at me, louder than the scratches. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to sleep, but all I could see was his face, those empty eyes watching me through the wall. The scratching stopped just before dawn, leaving a silence that felt worse somehow, like it was waiting for me to let my guard down. When morning came, I checked the wall. No marks, no holes, just smooth plaster. But the unease stayed, a weight in my chest. I told myself I'd figure it out tomorrow, talk to Ted, ask about 3B, maybe meet the other neighbors. For now, I had to get to work, pretend everything was fine. But as I locked the door and stepped into the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that those hollow eyes were still on me, waiting, knowing my name. The scratching woke me again at 2 a.m., sharp and deliberate, clawing through the silence of my new apartment on Elm Street. It came from the wall behind my headboard, the one separating my bedroom and 3A from the supposedly empty 3B. I lay frozen, my breath shallow, the blanket pulled tight to my chin. The sound wasn't random, it had a rhythm, like someone dragging nails across the plaster with purpose, testing, searching. My heart thudded, loud enough to drown out the distant city hum outside. I'd heard it the first night, too. After that gaunt man in the hallway whispered my name, Claire, like he'd known me forever. I'd tried to convince myself it was pipes, rats, anything normal. But tonight, the scratching felt alive, like it knew I was listening. I didn't move, didn't dare. The apartment was pitch dark, the kind of dark that makes you question what's real. The scratching paused, then started again, slower, closer, as if whatever was making it had pressed itself against the wall. I pictured those hollow eyes from the hallway, the man in the stained gray hoodie, his stretched face staring through the plaster. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I fumbled for my phone, the screen's glow harsh against the darkness, and checked the time, 2:03 a.m. I told myself to breathe, to wait it out. Old buildings creak and groan. That's all it was. But the sound didn't stop until nearly 3, leaving a silence that felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. When morning came, I dragged myself out of bed, eyes gritty from no sleep. The apartment looked normal in the daylight, boxes half unpacked, dishes stacked on the counter, the big windows letting in a gray haze. But the wall behind my bed felt wrong, like it was watching me. Back, I ran my hand over it, expecting scratches or marks, but the plaster was smooth, unmarked. My fingers trembled as I pulled away. I needed coffee, a shower, something to shake the fog of last night. That's when I saw it, a slip of paper under the front door, half hidden by a box I hadn't moved yet. I picked it up, my stomach twisting. The paper was yellowed, like it had been torn from an old notebook, and the handwriting was jagged, scrawled in black ink. "Welcome, Claire. Be careful," my name again. My pulse spiked. I turned the paper over, but there was nothing else, no name, no hint of who left it. I checked the hallway, the chain lock still in place, the deadbolt secure. The corridor was empty, the flickering bulb buzzing like a dying insect. I shut the door, locked it, and stuffed the note into a drawer. I didn't want to look at it, didn't want to think about what it meant, but the words burned in my mind. Be careful. At work, I was a mess, jumping at every noise, my eyes darting to the office door like that man might walk in. I'm a graphic designer, supposed to be creative, focused, but all I could think about was that note, those scratches. During lunch, I pulled out my laptop and Googled the building. Elm Street Apartments brought up a few tenant reviews: leaky pipes, slow maintenance, nothing surprising. Then I found an article from 1987, buried in a local news archive. A fire on the 4th floor had killed a couple, their bodies found charred in their bed. The cause was unclear, faulty wiring, maybe, tragic, but it didn't explain the man, the note, or my name in his mouth. I closed the tab, my hands cold. I was overthinking it. Had to be. Back home, the scratching came again that night, right? On cue at 2 a.m. this time. It was sharper, like something harder than nails, a knife, maybe, or a tool. It was joined by a faint tapping, irregular, like someone knocking softly, testing the wall's strength. I sat up, clutching my pillow, my breath hitching. The sounds weren't random anymore, they felt deliberate, like a message I couldn't decode. I tried earplugs, a trick I'd used in noisy dorms, but they only muffled the noise, not the fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every hiss of the radiator, sounded like him, the man from 3B, his hollow eyes boring into me through the dark. The next night was worse. The scratching was louder, more insistent, and the tapping felt closer, like it was inches from my head. I didn't sleep, just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my phone clutched in one hand, the pepper spray I'd bought on the way home in the other. I kept the lights on, but it didn't help. The apartment felt smaller, the walls tighter, like they were closing in. I checked the locks 3 times before bed, then again at midnight, my hands shaking as I rattled the chain. The note was still in the drawer, its words looping in my head. Be careful. Of what? Of him, or something worse. By the 4th night, I was unraveling. The scratching was a constant now, not just at 2 a.m., but in fits and starts. Like whatever was behind the wall was restless, impatient. I stopped unpacking, stopped trying to make the place feel like home. It didn't. It felt like his place, like I was the intruder. I kept the note hidden, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the man who knew my name before I'd even said hello. I wanted to call the landlord, Ted, and demand answers, but his warning echoed. Keep to yourself. I didn't know what that meant anymore, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't alone in this building, and whatever was watching me wasn't just curious, it was waiting. The hallway light flickered as I stepped out of the elevator. Grocery bags cutting into my palms. It was day 5 in my Elm Street apartment, and the weight of the scratching sounds, the cryptic note, and that man's voice saying my name, Claire, had turned every step into a test of nerves. The air smelled of damp earth, heavier today, like the building itself was rotting from the inside. I fumbled with my keys, eyes darting to the door of 3B across the hall. I hadn't seen him since that first day, the gaunt man in the stained gray hoodie, his hollow eyes boring into me. But I felt him everywhere, in the creak of the floorboards, the hiss of the radiator, the way the shadows seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I was halfway to my door when 3B's handle clicked. The door creaked open, slow and deliberate, and there he was, taller than I remembered, his frame filling the doorway. His face stretched tight like a mask that didn't fit. His hoodie was the same, the dark stains glinting wetly under the buzzing bulb. Claire, he said. His voice a low rasp, like wind through dead leaves. My name again. Spoken like he'd been waiting to say it. His eyes didn't blink, didn't waver, just locked onto mine, wide and empty, pulling me in like a void. My bag slipped, a can of soup hitting the floor with a dull thud. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, my throat tight with a fear I didn't understand. He didn't smile, didn't step closer, just stood there, staring. The hallway felt smaller, the walls pressing in, the air thick with that damp, earthy smell. "Who are you?" I finally croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. Then he turned, slow and mechanical, and slipped back into 3B, the door clicking shut. My legs shook as I scrambled for my keys, nearly dropping them as I unlocked 3A and stumbled inside. I slammed the door, through the chain, and leaned against it, heart pounding so hard it hurt. He knew my name again, and I hadn't told him. I called Ted, the landlord, before I even set the groceries down. My hands were trembling, the phone slippery against my palm. The guy in 3B. I said as soon as he picked up, "Who is he?" "He knows my name." Ted was quiet for too long. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. "Nobody's in 3B, he said finally, his voice flat, annoyed. "Been empty for months." I gripped the phone tighter. "I just saw him. He spoke to me. He said my name." Ted sighed, like I was wasting his time. "Look, Claire, some tenants play pranks. Old buildings, bored people. Ignore it. You're fine." He hung up before I could argue, leaving me staring at the phone. His words echoing, "Nobody's in 3B. That night, the scratching was back, louder, more insistent, like whatever was behind the wall was angry. It started at 8 a.m., as always, but now it came with whispers faint, garbled, like a radio stuck between stations. I lay in bed, earplugs useless, straining to make out the words. "Claire, here," was all I could catch, the rest lost in a low hiss. My skin prickled, and I pulled the blanket over my head, like a kid hiding from the dark. But the dark wasn't the problem, it was him. Those eyes, that voice, the way he said my name like it belonged to him. I didn't sleep, just lay there, listening to the scratches carve their way into my nerves. At work the next day, I was a wreck, my hands shaking as I tried to edit a logo. My coworker Jen noticed, her brow furrowing as she leaned over my desk. "You okay, Claire? You look like you haven't slept in days." I didn't want to sound crazy, but the words spilled out, the man, the note, the scratching, my name. Jen's eyes widened, her coffee cup pausing halfway to her mouth. "That's not normal," she said. "Sounds like a stalker. Have you checked your social media? Maybe someone's digging into you." I hadn't thought of that. On my break, I opened my accounts, all set to private, but there was a new follow request on Instagram from an account with no posts, no profile picture, just a string of numbers, 83,749,101. My stomach dropped. I blocked it, but the unease settled deeper, like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Back home, the hallway was quiet, but the air felt wrong, to still, to heavy. I checked the locks twice, then 3 times, my fingers lingering on the chain. The note was still in the drawer, its words welcome, Claire, be careful, burning in my mind. I didn't know what to be careful of, but I felt it, a presence that wasn't just the man. The scratching came again that night, sharper, almost desperate, and the whispers were clearer now. "Claire, stay." I sat up, heart racing, and grabbed the pepper spray from my nightstand. The apartment was mine, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like his, like I was trespassing in a place that didn't want me. And those eyes, those unblinking, Hollow eyes were still watching, waiting for me to slip. The lock clicked as I turned the key, but the door to my Elm Street apartment was already ajar. A sliver of darkness peeking through the gap. My heart stopped. I knew I'd locked up that morning deadbolt chain. Everything before dragging myself to work. My mind clouded with the man from 3B, his hollow eyes, and those relentless scratches in the night. The grocery bags in my hands felt heavier, the plastic straps biting into my skin as I stood frozen in the hallway. The air reeked of damp earth, thicker than ever, like the building was breathing something foul. I nudged the door open with my foot, half expecting to see him, the gaunt man in the gray hoodie, his stretched face waiting inside. But the apartment was empty, the late afternoon light spilling through the windows onto my half-unpacked boxes. I set the bags down, my pulse hammering, and checked every corner: living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom. Nothing was missing, nothing out of place, except one thing: my laptop, sitting on the coffee table, was open, its screen glowing faintly. I hadn't touched it since last night. I approached it like it might bite, my breath catching as I saw the browser open to my Facebook profile, logged in. My own face staring back from the profile picture. My hands shook as I slammed it shut. Someone had been here, in my space, touching my things, looking at my life. The note from a few days ago: welcome, Claire. Be careful flashed in my mind, its jagged handwriting now a scream in my head. I grabbed my phone and called Ted, the landlord, my voice shaking as I paced the living room. Someone broken, I said as soon as he answered. My door was open, my laptop. Someone was in here. Ted's sigh crackled through the line, heavy with irritation. Calm down, Claire. You probably forgot to lock it. Old doors stick sometimes. I wanted to scream. I locked it, Ted. I always do. And my laptop was open, logged into my account. He paused, then muttered, fine, I'll send someone to change the locks tomorrow. But you gotta relax. Nobody's out to get you. He hung up, his dismissal stinging like a slap. I checked the door again, deadbolt intact, chain untouched. How had someone gotten in? I spent the next hour changing every password: Facebook, email, banking, everything, my fingers clumsy on the keys, my eyes darting to the door every few seconds. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a trap, the walls watching, the air too thick to breathe. I shoved a chair under the doorknob for good measure, but it didn't help. The note was still in the drawer, its words: be careful now, a warning I couldn't ignore. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on the couch, clutching the pepper spray I'd bought, listening for any sound. The scratching came at 2 a.m., as always, but it was different, louder, angrier, like whatever was behind the wall was clawing to get out. And then, for the first time, I heard whispers, faint but unmistakable. Claire, stay. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone and hit record, holding it toward the wall, my hand trembling. The scratching paused, then resumed, the whispers weaving through it like a sick lullaby. Claire, here, stay. The words were disjointed, hissed, like they were coming from somewhere deeper than the wall. I stopped the recording after a minute, too scared to listen back, but I knew I'd caught something. The sound wasn't pipes or rats, it was deliberate, personal, aimed at me. I curled up on the couch, lights on, pepper spray in hand, and waited for dawn, the whispers echoing in my head long after they stopped. The next day at work, I was a ghost, pale, shaky, barely able to focus on my designs. Jen, my co-worker, cornered me at lunch, her eyes narrowing as she set her coffee down. You look worse than yesterday, Claire. What's going on? I hesitated, then played her the recording. my phone's speaker crackling with the scratches and whispers. Her face went pale, her fingers tightening around her mug. "That's not normal," she said, her voice low. "That's not just some neighbor messing with you. You need to get out of there." I wanted to, God, I did. But my lease was a 6-month trap, and I didn't have the money to break it. "I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm stuck." Jen leaned closer, her eyes serious. "Then get a camera, catch whoever's doing this, and stay somewhere else until the locks are changed." I nodded, but the idea of going back to that apartment made my skin crawl. That evening, Ted's guy showed up, a gruff man who swapped the locks in 20 minutes. Barely speaking, "Good luck," he muttered as he left, like he knew something I didn't. The new locks gleamed, but they didn't make me feel safe. The apartment was still his, the man from 3B, the thing behind the wall. Whatever was whispering my name. That night, the scratching was relentless, a frenzy of claws and thumps, like something was trying to break through. The whispers were louder, more insistent. "Claire, stay here," I recorded again, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't listen to the clip, couldn't bring myself to hear those words again. I sat against the headboard, pepper spray clutched tight, eyes locked on the bedroom door. The apartment was supposed to be my fresh start, but it felt like a cage, and I was the prey. Whoever or whatever was in 3B wasn't just watching me anymore. They were inside, and they weren't leaving. The new locks on my Elm Street apartment door gleamed under the hallway's flickering bulb, but they didn't stop the dread pooling in my gut. It was day 7, and the break in my door ajar. My laptop open to my Facebook profile had shattered any sense of safety. The scratching from the wall behind my bed, the whispers hissing "Claire, stay," and that man from 3B with his hollow eyes and raspy voice saying my name, they were all pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Jen, my co-worker, had been blunt. "Get a camera, Claire. Catch whoever's doing this." So I did. A cheap security camera from an online store, small enough to sit on my bookshelf. Its red light blinking like an unblinking eye. I set it up, facing the front door, its lens covering the living room, the only way into my bedroom. If someone was getting in, I'd see them. That night, I barely slept. The camera's red dot a faint glow in the dark. The scratching started at 2 a.m., as always, sharper now, like claws digging deeper into the wall between 3A and 3B. The whispers were there too, clearer, more insistent. "Claire, here, stay." I clutched my phone, the pepper spray on my nightstand, and listened, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the city's hum. The camera was recording, its app linked to my phone, but I couldn't check it, not in the dark, not with those sounds clawing through the wall. I told myself it was just a person, a creep, a stalker, someone Ted, the landlord, was too lazy to deal with. But the whispers didn't sound human, not entirely. Morning came, gray and heavy, the apartment cold despite the radiator's hiss. I dragged myself to the couch, my eyes burning from another sleepless night, and opened the camera app. The footage loaded slowly, timestamp from midnight to 6 a.m. I scrubbed through the first 2 hours, nothing but my empty living room, the boxes still unpacked, the windows reflecting the streetlights. Then, at 2:17 a.m., the screen flickered, static buzzing like a swarm of insects. My stomach twisted. When the image cleared, a shadow moved across the frame, tall to tall, its edges blurry, like it was made of smoke. It wasn't a person. Not exactly. Its limbs were too long. Its head tilted at an angle that made my skin crawl. It crossed the living room in 3 slow steps, pausing by my bedroom door, its form fraying like a bad signal. Then it was gone, the footage clear again. I replayed it, my hands shaking, my breath shallow. The shadow wasn't right, it didn't move like a person, didn't cast a proper outline. I zoomed in, but the image only got blurrier, the shape dissolving into static. My apartment was locked, the chain in place, no signs of a break-in. Yet, there it was, undeniable, caught on camera. I didn't go to work that day. I couldn't. Instead, I packed a bag and went to Jen's, my hands trembling as I locked the door behind me. Her apartment was across town, a small one-bedroom with bright walls and the comforting hum of a normal life. Stay as long as you need, she said, her eyes worried as I told her about the footage. I showed her the clip, her face paling as the shadow moved. "Claire, that's not a person," she whispered. "You can't go back there." But I had to, my lease, my job, my life, they were all tied to that apartment. I returned the next evening, the camera still blinking on the bookshelf. I checked the locks, the windows, every corner, my pulse racing. The apartment felt colder, the air thick with that damp, earthy smell, like something buried was seeping through the walls. I didn't sleep, just sat on the couch watching the camera's live feed on my phone. At 2 a.m., the scratching started again, louder, more frantic. The whispers now a low chant, "Claire, stay here." I gripped the pepper spray, my eyes glued to the screen. The feed glitched, static flaring, and there it was again, the shadow. Closer this time, its blurry form filling the frame. It moved toward the bedroom door, its edges unraveling like threads, and paused as if it knew I was watching. My breath caught, my finger hovering over the call button for 911. Then it vanished, the feed clearing, leaving only my empty living room. I called the police the next morning, my voice shaking as I explained the footage, the break-in, the man. In 3B, 2 officers came, a man and a woman, their faces skeptical as they checked the apartment. No signs of forced entry, the man said, glancing at the locks. "Your camera could be faulty. Old wiring. Bad signal happens a lot." I showed them the footage, but they shrugged. "Could be a prank. Kids messing with you," the woman said. "Get a better camera." Maybe. They left, their footsteps echoing in the hallway, and I felt smaller, more alone than ever. Nobody believed me, not Ted, not the police, but the shadow was real, and it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. That night, I stayed up, the camera's red light my only company. The scratching was relentless, the whispers louder, weaving my name into every hiss. I didn't record it this time, I couldn't. The footage was enough. Proof that something was in my apartment, something that didn't belong. I thought of the man in 3B, his unblinking eyes, his voice saying "Claire" like a curse. Was it him? On the camera, or something else? The line between fear and reality was blurring, and I was stuck on the wrong side, alone with the shadow that knew my name. I sat on my couch in the Elm Street apartment, baseball bat across my lap, pepper spray in one hand, my eyes locked on the front door. The security camera's red light blinked from the bookshelf, its lens watching the living room. But it offered no comfort. The footage from the past 2 nights, those blurry, 2 tall shadows moving through my apartment at 2 a.m. had broken. Something in me, the scratching, the whispers hissing, "Claire, stay here." The man from 3B with his hollow eyes and raspy voice saying my name, they weren't just in my head. The police had dismissed it as a prank. Ted, the landlord, had brushed me off, but the shadow on the camera was real, and it wasn't human. I couldn't stay here anymore, not after the break-in, not after those whispers seemed to come from inside the walls. At 2 a.m., the scratching started, louder, more frantic, like claws tearing through the plaster behind my bedroom wall. Then Came the knocks, 3 slow, deliberate raps on the front door, each one vibrating through my chest. I gripped the bat tighter, my knuckles white, and checked the camera feed on my phone. Nothing. Just my empty living room, the chain lock still in place. But the knocks came again, and then the whispers, clear and cold. "Claire, let me in." It was his voice, the man from 3B, the one who wasn't supposed to exist. I crept to the door, my breath shallow, and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty, the flickering bulb casting jagged shadows. But the knocking didn't stop, steady and relentless, echoing through the apartment until dawn broke and silence returned. I packed a bag that morning, clothes, laptop, toothbrush, and left. I couldn't do it anymore. The lease could go to hell. I'd figure out the money later. Jen, my co-worker, let me crash on her couch across town. Her small apartment, a lifeline of bright walls and normal sounds. "You're safe here," she said, her eyes worried as I told her about the knocks, the whispers, the shadow that moved like smoke. I wanted to believe her, but the weight of being watched clung to me, heavier than ever. I didn't sleep that first night at Jen's, my ears straining for the scratching, but it was quiet to quiet, like the calm before a storm. That the next night, it followed me. I woke at 2 a.m. to a faint scratching, not from the wall, but from the ceiling above Jen's couch. My heart sank, my skin prickling as the sound grew, slow and deliberate, just like at Elm Street. I sat up, clutching my phone, and listened. No whispers this time, just the scratching, like nails dragging across wood, carving something I couldn't see. Jen didn't hear it. She slept through everything, but I knew it wasn't her apartment settling. It was him, or it, the thing, that knew my name. I checked my phone, half expecting the camera app to show that shadow, but I'd left the camera at Elm Street. Still, I felt it, the same presence, the same hollow eyes. Then my phone glitched, the screen flickered, and a photo opened. One I didn't take. It was my old bedroom in 3A, the bed unmade, the wall behind it scratched and pitted, though it had been smooth when I left. I swiped, and another photo appeared. My desk at work, the logo I'd been editing open on my monitor. My hands shook as I swiped again, and there I was, sleeping on Jen's couch, the angle impossible, like someone had stood over me. A text came through from an unknown number. "Claire, you can't leave." Attached was a photo of me walking to Jen's building that morning, taken from behind, my ponytail swinging. I dropped the phone, my breath hitching, and checked the windows, the door. Everything was locked. But it didn't matter. It was here. I told Jen the next morning, my voice trembling as I showed her the photos. "This isn't a prank," she said, her face pale. "You need to go to the police again." I shook my head. They hadn't believed me before. They wouldn't now. Instead, I stayed up that night, sitting on Jen's couch, the lights on, my bat beside me. The scratching came again, louder, from the ceiling, the walls, everywhere, like it was circling me. I didn't record it. I couldn't bear to hear those whispers again. But I felt them, his voice, his eyes, following me, no matter where I went. By morning, I was unraveling, my eyes bloodshot, my hands shaking. Jen made me coffee, her voice gentle but firm. "You can't keep running, Claire. You need to figure out what this thing wants." But I didn't know, and that was the worst part. Was it the man from 3B, the shadow on the camera, or something else entirely? All I knew was my name on its lips, the scratching that followed me, the photos that shouldn't exist. I wasn't safe at Elm Street, and I wasn't safe here. The apartment was supposed to be my fresh start, but it had become a cage. And now the cage was everywhere, closing in with every scratch. The coffee shop's warmth did little to ease the chill in my bones as I sat by the window, scrolling through job listings on my phone. It had been a week since I fled my Elm Street apartment, leaving behind the scratching, the whispers, and that shadow on the security camera tall, to blurry, moving like smoke through my living room. I was crashing on Jen's couch across town, but the threat had followed me, scratches in the ceiling, photos on my phone I didn't take, a text from an unknown number saying, "Claire, you can't leave with a picture of me walking to Jen's." The man from 3B got hollow-eyed, his raspy voice hissing my name wasn't just in the apartment. He was everywhere, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just a man. I sipped my coffee, the steam fogging my glasses, when a prickle ran down my neck. I looked up, and there he was across the street, standing motionless under a street lamp. The same gray hoodie, stained and damp, hung off his too thin frame. His face was stretched tight, his eyes wide and unblinking, locked on me through the coffee shop's window. My cup slipped, splashing coffee across the table. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, his gaze pulling at me like a hook. I grabbed my phone and bag, my hands shaking, and bolted for the door, weaving through tables, my heart pounding. I didn't look back, but I felt him, his eyes burning into my back as I ran down the street, the city blurring around me. I took the long way to Jen's, cutting through crowded sidewalks, checking over my shoulder every few steps. Every face in the crowd looked like his, to pale, to stretched, to still, on the bus. I swore I saw him in the reflection of the window, standing at a stop we passed, but when I turned, he was gone. At Jen's, I locked the door, checked the windows, and sank onto the couch, my breath ragged. "You're okay," I whispered to myself. But I wasn't. The scratching started that night, not just from the ceiling now but from the walls, the floor, everywhere, like it was circling me. It was louder, angrier, a frenzy of claws that shook the air. Jen didn't hear it, she never did, but I knew it was real. The same sound that had haunted me at Elm Street. Desperate for answers, I opened my laptop and dug deeper than I had before. I searched Elm Street Apartments history, scrolling past the same 1987 fire article. Then I found a blog post from a former tenant, dated 3 years ago. They called it The Watcher in 3B, describing a man who appeared in the hallway, knowing their name, watching them through walls. They'd heard scratches, whispers, seen shadows that didn't belong. He wasn't human, the post read. I moved out, but he followed me. The blogger had vanished, their account inactive since the post. My stomach churned. It wasn't just me. Whatever this was, it had been here before, waiting for someone new to claim. I tried calling Ted, the landlord, my hands shaking as the phone rang. The number was disconnected, a robotic voice saying it was no longer in service. I called the building's office next, nothing, just an endless ring. I searched online, but the management company's website was gone, like it had never existed. The apartment, the man, the shadow, they were all tied together, and I was caught in the middle. Jen found me staring at the laptop, my face pale. "Claire, you need to leave the city," she said, her voice urgent. "This isn't normal." But where could I go? The scratching followed me. The photos appeared on my phone. His eyes found me across a crowded street. That night, the scratching was deafening. A storm of claws from every surface, ceiling, walls, floor, like the apartment itself was trying to tear me apart. I sat up, clutching my baseball bat, the lights on, my phone glowing with another glitched photo, me in the coffee shop, taken from outside, his shadow in the corner of the frame. I didn't sleep, didn't move, just waited for dawn, his voice echoing in my head. Claire, it wasn't just a name anymore. It was a chain, binding me to something I couldn't escape. The man, the shadow, the thing that knew me. It wasn't in 3B. It was in my life, in my skin. And it wasn't letting go. I saw him again the next day, in the reflection of a store window, standing behind me, his hollow eyes unblinking. I spun around, but the street was empty. The scratching followed me everywhere now, a constant hum under the city's noise, and I knew the truth. He wasn't just watching, he was pulling me in, his gaze a void that swallowed everything. I wasn't safe at Jen's, at the coffee shop, anywhere. The apartment was just the beginning, and now wherever I went, he was there, waiting, his voice whispering my name like a promise. I couldn't stay in the city anymore, not with him watching, his hollow eyes, his raspy voice hissing Claire. Like a curse, the Elm Street apartment was behind me, but the scratching, the whispers, the shadow that moved like smoke on my camera, they'd followed me to Jen's, to the coffee shop, to every corner of my life. The photos on my phone, taken from impossible angles, the text saying, "Claire, you can't leave." The blog about the watcher in 3B who wasn't human. It was too much. I'd seen him across the street, his gaunt frame in that stained gray hoodie, his unblinking gaze pulling me into a void. Jen's apartment wasn't safe, nowhere was. I had to end this, whatever this was. I bought a bus ticket to a small town 3 hours away. A place with no connection to me, no history. I packed, light, just a backpack with clothes, my laptop, and the pepper spray I still clutched like a lifeline. Jen drove me to the station, her face tight with worry. "Call me when you get there," she said, hugging me, "and don't look back." I nodded, but as the bus pulled away, I felt it, his presence, heavy like a shadow sitting beside me. The scratching started that night in my motel room, faint but unmistakable, coming from the ceiling. My heart sank. I'd run, but he was still here, his voice whispering, "Claire, stay." Through the walls. The next day, I couldn't take it anymore. Running wasn't working. Hiding wasn't enough. I needed answers. I opened my laptop and dug deeper than ever, searching for anything about Elm Street, the watcher, the thing that knew my name. I found a forum post, buried in an obscure archive, from a woman who'd lived in 3B a decade ago. She described the same man, gaunt, hollow-eyed, whispering her name. "He's not alive," she wrote. "He's tied to the building, to the fire in '87. I burned his mark to escape." She mentioned a symbol scratched into her wall, one she'd burned to break his hold. There was no photo, just a description, a jagged circle with 3 lines, crossing inside, like a claw mark. I didn't want to believe it, but the scratching, the photos, the shadow, they weren't human. Back at Jen's, I'd ignored the blog's warning, but now I saw it. The thing wasn't just following me. It was claiming me. I checked my phone, dreading what I'd find. Another photo had appeared. Me on the bus, head against the window, taken from inside. My hands shook as I scrolled, and there, in the last image, was the symbol scratched into the wall of my old bedroom in 3A, faint but clear. I hadn't seen it before, but it was there, carved where the scratching always came from. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep running. It would follow me forever. I took the next bus back to the city, my heart pounding, the pepper spray in my pocket, a lighter and a can of hairspray from the motel's store. Elm Street was quiet when I arrived, the building looming under a gray sky. The hallway smelled of damp earth, the flickering bulb buzzing like a warning. I unlocked 3A. The air inside cold and heavy, like the apartment was holding its breath. The wall behind my old bed was still there, and so was the symbol, scratched faintly into the plaster, a jagged circle, 3 lines crossing. Just as the woman described, I didn't hesitate. I sprayed the hairspray over the symbol, the chemical, smell sharp in my nose, and flicked the lighter. The flame caught fast, licking up the wall, the symbol blackening as the plaster scorched. The scratching started, deafening, from every wall, the ceiling, the floor. Like the building was screaming, the whispers came to, a chorus of Claire, stay here, louder, angrier, until it was a roar in my ears. I backed away, the flame growing, smoke stinging my eyes. Then I saw him in the corner, his gaunt frame, his hollow eyes, his mouth open in a silent scream as the symbol burned. The air shifted, like a weight lifting, and he was gone. The whispers silenced, the scratching stopped. I stumbled out, coughing, the fire alarm blaring as I ran down the stairs. The fire didn't spread, only the symbol burned, leaving a charred scar on the wall. I stayed at Jen's that night, my hands still shaking, but the scratching didn't come. My phone stayed quiet, no new photos, no texts. Days later, I moved to the small town, found a new job, a new apartment. The nightmares lingered, his eyes, his voice, but they faded. The thing in 3B was gone, burned out with its mark, its hold on me broken. But sometimes in the quiet, I feel a prickle, a shadow in the corner of my eye. I don't look. I don't need to. I know he's gone, but I'll never forget the sound of my name in his voice, or the truth that some things don't let go easily.